What is your I was only gone for 5 minutes story? Left the golden retriever alone when he was about a year old. The food container wasn't shut all the way. Dog proceeded to eat about 20 pounds of food in 5 minutes. His stomach was so full, he couldn't lay down. We thought he had bloat. So we loaded him in the car to take him to the vet. He then made the most noxious and horrible gas in the car. And the vet said he was fine. We will never underestimate this dog's food obsession again. I had a dog who loved food like that. Once we were moving and someone was carrying in a box of frozen food. Somehow a frozen hot dog fell out, and as soon as it hit the ground she grabbed it and swallowed it. A frozen solid hot dog. I was crying because I thought she would die. I was a new dog owner. She ate many strange things after that. She was the best dog. When my stepsister was about 5, I gave her some chicken nuggets and a ketchup bottle. I didn't babysit kids growing up, so I didn't know I was supposed to do the ketchup dispensing. I came back in the room. Ketchup is all over her and the floor, and she looks at me and says, "This always happens." Double quote. Friend of my sister was visiting, and for some reason, they decided to hang out in my room. I went to the bathroom. 5 minutes later, after hearing loud crashes, both the ceiling light and curtain rails were on the floor. Glass shards everywhere. The ceiling also had red stains. What happened? There was a mosquito. So my sister got a soccer ball, killed the mosquito, but also broke my room. When I was young, I worked shift hours and we were working beyond union regulated maximums because of a series of problems. Anyway, after more than 2 continuous weeks of work, 16 days in a row, we got a Friday off. Friends come over. I leave the room and not 5 minutes later, one friend is already missing his pants and has drank an entire bottle of Jim Beam. Went out to a bar with my 2 older brothers. Went to the bathroom. Came back to one of them hanging all over some poor woman he knew from high school and blubbering about how his life is going to shit. In his defense, it really is. And the other had started stripping and waving his shirt around. I'm still not sure how I managed to get us all home that night. Mine was when I was working on a project for an introduction engineering class. We had to make a bubble blowing device, which is simple enough. The groups for the project were assigned, and I got stuck with probably the worst group imaginable. With about 1 week until the project was due, we were working at a wood shop at the university. I left for 5 minutes to check out a soldering iron. When I got back, the entire project was in pieces. No one would say what happened. Fun times. In 2004, I was 8 years old. I was playing Monopoly with my dad during the Super Bowl, and I took a break to go to the kitchen and have a snack. From the small television in my kitchen, I watched the halftime show and saw Justin Timberlake expose Janet Jackson's breast. I was only gone 5 minutes from playing a harmless board game and I saw my first titty. One time my sister made a cake for a friend's birthday party. Now she is crazy talented. And this cake looked like this giant ornate teacup. She had to head into town for like 20 minutes to grab something else before the party. And so she left me in charge of watching the cake to make sure a dog didn't get it. Long story short, I went to the bathroom midway through cake watching and was literally gone for about 5 minutes. When I came back, half of the cake was missing, and a startled collie was fleeing the room. When my sister came back, she was outraged. She went to the party, surprisingly, without the half-eaten cake with dog slobber on it. When she came home that evening, she was watching TV on the couch and the collie came over all apologetically. Now you see, that would be a really cute forgiveness story if the collie hadn't proceeded to throw up the cake she had eaten on her shoes. Try 1 minute. I was a school teacher in my first year of teaching. There was a delay in the ringing of the bell after second period and my kids got held in class for about 5 extra minutes. I stepped outside my classroom for literally a minute to ask another teacher what was going on, and when I came back in, my seniors had forcefully removed the window and a few students had escaped. Rookie mistake. I don't remember it, but when I was a toddler, my mom made a pina colada. As she was drinking it, the landline phone rang. She went across the room to answer it. Meanwhile, I came in the room and drank the entire pina colada while she wasn't looking. According to mom, I sat on my bed and giggled for about 20 minutes. I ate plastic grapes when I was a toddler. The story of my mom hysterically calling the doctor is one of my dad's favorite. You don't understand. It's plastic grapes. She's gonna die. Double quote. When I was toddler, I inserted a flower seed. It was rounded. About 0.5 centimeters in diameter, deep into my nostril. Well, to the doctor it was. Damn man. Toddler is weird. Including all of us. Left my dog home for a few minutes to run to the corner store. Came back to find she had upended the garbage and dragged it all through the apartment. Destroyed one of my shoes. Knocked over a 7-foot easel. And peed on the floor, then rolled in it, then tracked it everywhere. She's not even ordinarily destructive or has major separation anxiety. Just had a big ol' random freak out. When I got home she was so embarrassed. And it took me 2 hours to clean up after her. About a month ago, I decided to take a quick shower. Meanwhile, in the living room, my 6-year-old decided to recreate the Pixar short of the little lamp jumping up and down on the rubber ball. It did not work. Slipped. Hit her head on the corner of the aquarium stand. Blood everywhere. She is fine. The doctor glued her head back together. People are right about how much scalp wounds bleed. Though. Yeesh. Oh boy, here goes. I show up to a friend's house around 5:30 p.m. We are gonna have some drinks, watch some movies, etc. It's about 6 or 7 of us in total just having a dude's night basically. I'm the last to show up but the first guy only got there 30 minutes prior to me, who we will call Steve. Steve walks up to me and says, "What's up?" His words are a little slurred and apparently he started pounding vodka the second he showed up. Steve is known to start pissing when he's drunk. About 10 minutes later I notice Steve is passed out on the couch and I recommend to my buddy, who owns a house couch, that we put him in the bathtub so when he inevitably takes a piss it will go down a drain. My buddy says he's not worried about it and doesn't think Steve will pee. 5 minutes later there is a puddle under the couch. We go into the other room not wanting to deal with it right then and there. We start playing some sort of video game when we hear a noise coming from Steve. We walk in, it's only been about 4-5 minutes since we left that room, and Steve is completely naked bent over on the couch fingering his own ass. I had never seen anything like it. We attempted to get him to stop but he rolls over onto his back and pulls his legs up and starts to finger his ass while jerking off. We leave the room. Once when I was like 12 or something, I was babysitting my niece, 7ish years old, and nephew, 2ish years old. My niece was really sad and was in her room. I put a movie on for the 2-year-old and let him sit there with milk and watch. He was normally really good by himself like that. I told my nephew I would be back in 5 minutes. I was going to try to cheer Sissy up. He was calm and watching TV. I go in the room. Immediately hear bang bang bang. And come out of his milk dripping from the ceiling. And him stabbing a metal baseball bat through the living room walls. He was the chillest kid ever 100% of the time, so my sister almost didn't believe me when she came home. A church wedding was 48 minutes late getting started. At one point, I, as church organist, needed to use the men's room after having played 45 minutes of prelude music. In the 5 minutes I was gone, the bride finally showed up and started walking down the aisle while I was trying to race up the staircase to the organ loft to accompany her with the processional she chosen. Afterwards, she blamed me for being late, when I was there the entire time. Was partying in an airplane bunker after skydiving with the tandem instructors and my college's adventure club. The place is bumping. The instructors were all over the place in age, 20s 50s, but everyone was raging and having a blast. I stepped out of the hangar to take a piss. When I came back in, every single instructor was butt-ass naked. Guys flicking each other's dicks and sizing each other up. Our club retreated to our tents for the night shortly after they encouraged our participation. Super young toddler and relative of mine. I go away for 5 minutes and I come back to find the kid standing in a toilet with shampoo in his hands, crying because he accidentally flushed the toilet and scared himself. I think he thought the toilet was a place to bathe. He would kill me if he knew I told people this. So I never did until now. You can imagine how flabbergasted I was. Went to poop. Came back blood all over couch and carpet. 1. 5-year-old daughter reached for something on side table from recliner and fell, hitting it on way down, slicing her eyebrow open. Best part. It was my first week being stay-at-home dad. Don't be too hard on yourself. The first time I was left alone with my dad, he gave me food poisoning. To his credit, he didn't know how old the baby food in the fridge was, but he still feels bad about it. Probably because he did it twice. This happened freshman year of college. On a Thursday. We lived in a suite style situation. 6 people. 3 bedrooms. 1 common room. Doors were weirdly thin, not in thickness, in width. I'd been marathoning Futurama and came out half through an episode just to get caught up in conversation with my suitemates and have a few drinks before they headed out for a party. Conversation ends and they leave for the party and I head back to my room to finish the episode, about 12 minutes. Anyway, I finish the episode and when I get up to go to the bathroom I open my door to find one of my suitemates' bed, dresser, and all over belongings are all in the common room. Not even in a messy state. The dresser still had a mess on top of it. The bed was made. Hell, it had even been put on risers. The weird thing is that when we went to put the bed back the next day we found out the bed doesn't even fit through the door frame without being flipped sideways and going around the corner. We still try to figure out who did it. TL. Dr. All my suitemate's belongings went from his room to the common room in under 12 minutes without any loud sound and everyone had already headed out to party and it wasn't even a messy job. I'm a mom. I have a ton of those. I only left the room for 5 minutes. But my best one would be my son was in his bedroom coloring. Minding his own business. What I thought behaving. I came back into his room and he had drew in Sharpie marker a bunch of circles and lines. And even drew on my white dog. The most recent was yesterday. I was at the shoe store buying shoes for my wife and child in tow. He took off running down the aisles so I pointed out a salesman and told my wife ask that guy where the clearance rack is. I took off after our child and managed to corral him in fairly short order. When I got back my wife was being handed a receipt by the guy who I thought was a salesman. Turned out he actually worked for Canadian Tire and in the 5 minutes I was gone he had signed her up for a new credit card. Approved and everything. The receipt was her new account number. My second year of attending summer camp. I get permission from my counselor to leave the cabin and go to the bathroom during rest hour. When I return, the place is deserted. Only 2 other girls are still there. Counselors and the rest of the cabin are sitting outside in a circle. In the 5 minutes it took to do my business and come back, almost the entire cabin had mocked one girl to the point of tears. The counselors took everyone involved outside to talk. The only other campers, besides myself, who hadn't been part of the incident were the 2 girls I encountered, as they had somehow managed to sleep through the chaos. The rest of rest hour was anything but restful. I was in rehab and we each had our own apartments for the 28-day stay. After all the meetings and such, some of us would hang out and watch movies or whatever. I had a couple of guys I liked hanging out with over my place and had some terrible Adam Sandler movie on. So anyway, I didn't really mind missing part of the movie so I said I was going to take a quick shower since it was one of those really hot days here. I'm in the shower for literally 5 minutes when all of a sudden the door to the bathroom opens. I thought it was one of the guys messing with me. Nope. Was the house manager handing me a urine test. Apparently he was doing room checks. And unbeknownst to me, the other 2 guys were smoking crack while I was in the shower and got caught. And kicked out. I hadn't even toweled off and had to provide a urine sample. Thankfully, I wasn't stupid enough to take up a crack addiction in rehab. So I was fine. But I never saw those guys ever again. It was actually pretty scary when everything was completely fine 5 minutes beforehand. And no, I didn't finish the Adam Sandler movie. I guess that's a positive out of the whole thing. Probably too late, but here it goes. When I was 16 and a new driver, I was supposed to be meeting my stepdad at a cell phone store so I could get my own phone. Original Nokia brick phone. With Snake. I had 5 minutes to kill. So I stopped in at this local sporting goods store to check out the baseball bats. As baseball season was approaching, I was in the store for about 5 minutes when a man ran in and yelled, "Who owns a blue truck?" My heart sank as I sprinted outside. My truck wasn't there. I heard commotion down the street. So I ran out to the road so I could see. The store was set off the road slightly and an adjacent building blocked the view. I saw my truck. Halfway in a brick building. The other side of the wall was the waiting room for an insurance company. Luckily no one was there at the time. The parking brake didn't work. So I could only leave it in gear when I parked places. As it was a manual transmission. Well, it slipped out of gear. Rolled backwards and made an arching path. Steering wheel was locked in a slightly turned position. In a 5-lane road. It managed to miss all traffic. But a hero thought he'd chase it down and slam the parking brake. That didn't work. He slipped and fell under the truck as it slammed into the building. Avoiding injury. This was terribly embarrassing. And even now, over 10 years later, when I go back home to visit, I can see where the brick color is slightly different from where they restored it. Was fostering a dog once. She had the worst separation anxiety I've ever experienced. If I was even slightly out of her line of sight, she'd panic and freak out. One day I went into the bathroom to take a dump. And I closed the door because I'm a civilized human being. Closing the door was a mistake because it meant she could no longer see me. It took about 3 minutes. When I opened the bathroom door, the carpeting in the entire hallway had been peeled back off the floor like a banana peel. The entire hallway, about 10 feet by 5 feet of carpet. In the end I still managed to fall in love with her and I've owned her for 3 years now and she's my best friend. In that moment, though, I wanted to throw her off the roof. During the summer I went out to get some cookout. Literally about a 5-minute drive from my house. It was pretty hot and really quiet outside. No one was doing anything. After picking up my food, I drove back to my house and backed in and started walking to my front door, looking down at my food because who looks where they're going anyway? When 2 of the biggest Rottweilers I have ever seen come up to me from nowhere and start licking me. Trying to take my food. Now these were huge dogs and they were not there when I left. Turns out they picked our cul-de-sac as a little cool down spot and started jumping between homes, hiding on porches out of the sun to beat the heat. They happened to be on my porch when I got home and just ran towards the nearest company they could when they couldn't get inside. They were really sweet dogs though. Super sweet dogs. Backstory. My English professor is a 27-year-old guy. A total creep who thinks he's rebelling against society when he's really just being a dick. Onto the story. I quietly excuse myself from a lecture on metaphors for pieces of a whole. And how pieces of the whole really aren't like the whole at all. I come back to everyone in stunned, scared silence. And one girl rushing out sobbing. And broken glass everywhere on the floor. Turns out he had, in the middle of talking, thrown his glass to the floor as hard as he could, spraying glass everywhere, and continued to calmly lecture, without bothering to clean the glass, about how the shards were nothing like a drinking cup. He left the classroom without even picking up the pieces. I went upstairs in my grandparents' house to use the restroom. My kids were downstairs with a lot of family members. I hear banging and screaming and crying and run back downstairs to the kitchen to find my 3-year-old son bloody faced. My sil passed out on the floor. And my dad washing his hands. Turns out my son had decided to jump off the back of the couch, do some sort of flip into the corner of the coffee table and literally knock his eyeball out. My sil found him and screamed. My dad, Vietnam vet, walked in and just used his thumb to push the eyeball back in. Myself fainted. And my dad was washing off the blood from his hands. My son was crying and had a big gash from the edge of his eye to his hairline, and we had to go to the ER for stitches. This was the night of the 26th of December. At the ER they put him in a papoose thing and a head vest so he couldn't move, and the doc told me to stand on the side opposite him talking to my son and keeping him looking at me so he could stitch him up without sedation if possible. So I got to smile and stare at my son's face and the eye as they stitched him up and saw every detail while I kept my voice cheerful. I just wanted to pee and it wasn't even 5 minutes. A tie between when my 2-year-old was sent to her room for freaking out and painted with her poop, or when she got into the fridge and broke all the eggs all over the kitchen floor. Multiple times. Dang it, kid. I was at work all of these times, so my husband got to deal with the cleanup. He threw the entire down comforter from the poop incident in the wash without removing the duvet cover, but by some miracle it didn't get ruined and it's back on their bed good as new. I was amazed the room didn't stink when I walked in. He did a great job cleaning it.